As we're recording this, the world is awaiting a potential retaliation from Iran and Hezbollah to the recent Israeli assassinations in Beirut and Tehran of top Hamas and Hezbollah officials. I'm just wondering your perspective. What do you think is most important for people to know about the various actors here and their calculations as we enter this potential new phase of war?
I've been covering the Middle East, living there, writing as a journalist and academic and other things for about 55 years. So I've watched this over half a century. And the most striking thing to me in that entire period, I would say, since the late 1960s, is what we're witnessing today, the face-off between an Israeli-American alliance with much of the Western world, but not all of it, against a new alliance of forces in the Middle East, which is unlike the old ones, which was Egypt and Syria and Saudi Arabia and some individual countries, Algeria. But the alliance confronting, resisting, and challenging the U.S. and Israel is a bunch of non-state Arab armed powerful actors: Hezbollah, Hamas, Ansarullah, the forces in Iraq and Syria, the popular mobilization forces, a bunch of non-state actors who are really powerful and closely linked to Iran. And this is the big confrontation now. So and the thing about this is we've seen this develop now. It's taken about 25, 30 years, after the Iranian Revolution, the birth of Hezbollah and Hamas in the 1980s. We've seen this going on now for about 30, 40 years. And they're very transparent, these forces in the Middle East, mostly Arab, some Iranian. We know exactly what they want. We know exactly what they don't want. What they want is not to be treated like children and puppets by the Western imperial powers and Israel. And this is particularly what Iran doesn't want. They don't want to be sanctioned. They don't want to be threatened. They don't want to be attacked. They don't want to be occupied. They don't want to be subjugated at will, as that had been their fate under the British and the Turks and the Russians and the French and then the Americans and coup d'etat. And they're fed up with that. And the Iranians are basically standing their ground. And these other groups with them are doing the same thing, but in their own context. So Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestine, Ansarullah in Yemen, these groups are saying, look, we are nationalist militant resistance groups. We are resisting the oppression and the threats and the savage attacks of Israel and the US and allied forces with them. And we're not going to just sit there and take it like the Arab governments used to do in the past. And so this is the real new important dynamic that people have to look for. And in that context, I would say what we should look for in the current immediate situation, which is, as you said, the world is anticipating Iranian and Hezbollah, maybe Ansarullah retaliation because they were attacked. Hodeidah port was attacked. We're anticipating what's the reaction going to be, the retaliation. And we have to calculate that or anticipate that in the context of their own nationalist mindset. And so they may not have a big, massive military attack. This is what Israel and the West are assuming. Because Israel and the West have used massive military attacks as their main instrument of statecraft in the region for many years. In fact, since Napoleon in 1798, the West has been here nonstop for 2.25 centuries, using its military might, ordering people around and getting its way most of the time. This is the first time that you have a really significant regional grouping that pushes back against these foreign colonial military apartheid racist powers. And this is what really matters most. And what this means in the details, sorry, it took me a long time to get to answer your question. What we should look for is, what do Hezbollah and Iran want the West and Israel to do vis-a-vis Gaza, vis-a-vis Palestinian rights, vis-a-vis the Palestinian resistance movement? And this is, I think, going to be the crucial thing. And my guess is we're not going to necessarily have big military actions and the stuff that CNN and the New York Times like, we're going to have probably a combination of some militant actions, possibly some cyber attacks, some quiet stuff behind the scenes that rattles people. And more importantly, what you're going to get is a possible diplomatic breakthrough, which was hinted at today when the US, Qatar, and Egypt issued a statement today, meaning Thursday, August 8th, saying that they want all the parties, essentially Israel and Hamas, to get back to the negotiations and seal this ceasefire agreement for exchange of prisoners and hostages and other things, because all the details have been worked out. All the what they called the framework has been worked out, and they just have to work out the details, which the three powers who are leading the mediation say they can do. This is very significant for those three together to say this kind of thing with such force and specificity, and they're giving a timeline. I mean, this is as close as we've gotten to the United States ordering Israel to, get with the show. They've done enough in the genocide. They haven't achieved all their goals. They can keep killing lots of people. All it's doing is making the situation worse for Israel and for the U.S. and for the Democratic Party. So this is a pretty significant move, and I think the response to that move will be the place where I would look for the most significant retaliation by Iran and Hezbollah in cahoots with Hamas, which would be retaliation in terms of the agreement on the arrangements in Gaza immediately after the ceasefire happens, the exchange of prisoners and hostages happens, the slow withdrawal of the Israeli forces, humanitarian aid resumes, and things like that. So there'll probably be a period of some months. And then after that, you get to what people have called the day after. That is, I think, going to be the arena in which the Iranians and Hezbollah and their Arab partners strike back against what the Israelis did. But this is just my speculation. We're all speculating.
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to say that Israel wants Iran and Hezbollah to escalate because it wants an excuse to fight a direct war with Iran and Hezbollah? With Hezbollah, there's a long history of that. As you mentioned, Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, which led to the creation of Hezbollah. In the process, Israel killed tens of thousands of people and has always wanted to crush Hezbollah ever since, because Hezbollah can fight back. But if it's true that Israel wants a war with these people, it wants to draw on Iran, do Iran and Hezbollah, do you think they're trying to factor that in, that they want to retaliate, but not in a way that gives Israel a pretext to go even further, as Israel's done many times before in its history?